Look closely at this image of peak physical fitness. We are conditioned to see shredded muscles and heavy lifts as the ultimate proof of health. But that aesthetic perfection can actually mask a dangerous metabolic reality. Modern fitness culture is obsessed with lean mass. To get those results, everyday athletes are consuming massive amounts of animal protein, adopting diets like paleo to carve out these specific aesthetic physiques. Yet when these athletes stepped into a medical clinic, a strange paradox emerges. People crushing heavy deadlifts and high-intensity workouts are quietly failing their blood tests, showing alarming rates of high cholesterol and prediabetes. Prioritizing mere muscles over internal metabolic metrics has created a hidden epidemic. We have built an entire fitness industry that produces people who look incredibly healthy on the outside, but are quietly breaking down on the inside. Take RichardDMin. By any standard external metric, he was in elite shape, an NCAA championship swimmer, active martial artist, and highly conditioned athlete. He paired that physical intensity with a demanding professional life. As a Silicon Valley tech executive, he worked relentlessly in high-pressure startup environments. Then, without warning, his body failed. Out of nowhere, Richard suffered a massive stroke. The internal damage was severe. He remained in a coma for 2 weeks, leaving those around him preparing for his death. He survived, but the neurological aftermath was devastating. The stroke caused aphasia, damage to the brain's language centers, that stripped away his basic ability to speak, write, and communicate. Richard's catastrophic failure shares a root cause with those shredded CrossFit athletes who are suddenly discovering they have hypertensive blood pressure and elevated triglycerides. A six-pack cannot stop a stroke. Relying on mirror reflections is a flawed method for measuring whether that body can actually survive. Faced with his failing health, Richard applied his startup finder obsession to his own biology. He abandoned gym folklore and began analyzing thousands of peer-reviewed clinical research papers to isolate the true cause of his stroke. He looked for broad consensus among the world's leading medical bodies, digging into dietary analyses published by the World Health Organization to find the facts on disease prevention. He cross-referenced that global data with the academic rigor of major medical research universities, including Harvard and Stanford, looking for clear, replicable evidence. The data revealed that most chronic diseases, including 80, when you strip away the marketing, the science points in one direction. Trusting peer-reviewed clinical data over fitness influencer opinions is the only accurate way to assess and lower your risk of chronic disease. To see how fast this data plays out in the real world, consider a recent clinical trial at a CrossFit gym. A group of meat-eating athletes completely dropped their animal protein and switched to a whole food, plant-based diet for 35 days. The protocol was remarkably simple. There was no macro tracking, no calorie counting, and no portion restriction. The participants simply ate whole grains, beans, fruit, and vegetables until they were full. After just 5 weeks, blood tests revealed a steep drop in LDL cholesterol, the metric heavily linked to cardiovascular events. Improvements showed up across the board. Fasting glucose normalized, and hypertensive blood pressure dropped into the safe zone. This happens because of a specific biological mechanism. A whole food, plant-based diet heals the endothelial cells, the delicate inner lining of your blood vessels, allowing them to clear out arterial blockages and rapidly lower systemic inflammation. By supplying the body with the right fuel, targeted dietary intervention acts faster and more effectively than standard medical treatments when it comes to reversing deep metabolic damage. After using this data to rebuild his health, Richard set a new target. Based on his analysis of the biological limits of human aging, he is now strictly adhering to a plant-based protocol with the personal goal of reaching 150 years of age. To achieve that, he looks to the blue zones, specific demographic regions where human populations naturally live the longest, healthiest lives on Earth, often well past 100 years old. Look at the traditional Okinawan diet. Rather than relying on heavy meat or fish consumption, over 70% of their daily caloric intake historically came from a single plant, the nutrient-dense purple sweet potato. The exact same principles work in modern Western environments. In Loma Linda, California, the Seventh-day Adventists eat a well-balanced plant-based diet and exhibit cancer and heart disease death rates that are fractions of the national average. These isolated populations prove that extreme human longevity isn't a random accident of genetics or geography. It is a replicable biological outcome directly tied to consuming whole plants. Modern fitness culture chases the superficial goal of a muscular aesthetic, but true health is defined by the lifelong, disease-proof resilience of your internal organs. Richard's recovery is supported by the same evidence reviewed by the World Health Organization and thousands of clinical specialists. When major medical institutions examine the data, they find that plant-based nutrition is the consistent common denominator for human survival. So the choice is yours. You can continue to structure your diet around your ego and the mirror, or you can start eating for your life. If you still believe heavy animal protein is required for optimal human health, the burden of proof is on you. You have to prove the clinical data wrong.